Hey everybody, welcome to ShapesXR. I'm just going for a little swim here in the world of Lucky's Tale, a classic VR game that we're going to break down today in this episode of XR Remake. So today we're going to look specifically at the draw tool in ShapesXR and how you can use it to sketch out environments and create more organic looking shapes like you see here. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at the interactivity tool, a brand new feature in ShapesXR that you can use to add actual interactivity to your projects to give users a more robust interactive experience. So come along with us and let's get started. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're creating things at proper scale. So I want to show you a little hack in ShapesXR that I use all the time. Every time I start a project, this is what I do. So I'm going to come over here to my Shapes button, go here to my Assets library, and come down here to the characters. And then using my Grip button, I'm going to choose one of the characters that's standing up. So I'm going to choose this one here. And then using that Grip button, I'm going to bring the character into the scene. And the cool thing about this is when I bring a character in using the Grip button, this character comes in at what we consider one-to-one scale. So this is roughly life size. So this is the scale that I should be creating at. And I'm going to go ahead and just turn him around here. And so that's just a really great thing to do when you first come into a project. Just bring in a character at one-to-one scale to make sure that you're creating your scene at the proper scale. All right, so I've also brought in a reference photo here. So this is the environment that we're going to create. So I'll just put that over here. And you can see here on the photo, we've got this book floating in the air. That's the menu that people are going to be interacting with. So that menu, that book, should roughly be about this size. So we're going to create that later, but it gives you an idea of the size of the environment that we're going to create. So this environment is a basic circle shape. So let's start with that, just a basic shape for our environment. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to change my color first to blue, and then come up here to my assets library, my primitives. I'm going to choose this column shape here. And I'm not going to worry about being too specific with this right now. We can always change this later, but I'm going to scale this up and create roughly about the size of this platform that we need for our scene, and then position it right about there. So maybe just a little bit bigger. So that's roughly the size of the environment that we're going to create. All right, so we've got a basic shape down. We roughly know the scale that we should be creating at. And so I want to now talk about a tool that I think gets overlooked oftentimes in shapes, and that is the draw tool. And we're going to be focusing a lot on the draw tool. We're going to be using that a lot to create this environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my world grid here, go back to my draw tool, which is under my shapes button menu, third icon down, draw tool. That's where you're going to find it. And I'm going to start off by using one of these pen tools here. So I'm going to choose this one here. Actually, I'm going to change the color too so that we can see this. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use this draw tool to just roughly sketch out some aspects of my scene so I know, how things should be created and I don't have to rethink scale and size every time I create something. So using this pen tool here, I'm going to start sketching out the locations of these islands. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we've got one in the kind of the foreground here. So that island's going to roughly be here. We got a bigger one in the back. So let's just go ahead and start sketching out where these islands are going to go. All right, so we've got the basic location of these little islands here. So I'm going to go to my lock tool, and that's under my shapes button down here to this padlock icon here. And I've already got lock selected. And just using my trigger button, I'm going to come in here and lock these objects. I'll go ahead and lock the floor too, just in case. And that way I don't move them when I'm actually creating the islands. All right, so the next draw tool that we're going to use is this polygon shape here. Now, these two icons here, this diamond and this polygon shape, actually do the same thing. This one's just hard edges, and this one is soft edges. And you'll see what they do here in just a second. So the first thing actually I'm going to do is choose a color that's more conducive to the color of our island. So we'll choose that color there, and then choose our volumizing tool here with soft edges. And then based on our sketch, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing out where I think these islands should be. So you can see kind of how this volumizing tool works. So I just create my circle, and then I keep holding and I just bring down. And again, we call this a volumizing tool. So you're just creating sort of these interesting shapes. So let's go ahead and make our islands. All right, now that we have our islands in place, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to unlock everything. And then I'm going to come in here and remove our sketches. Now that we have our islands in place, we don't need these anymore. So we'll go ahead and just delete those. And then I'm going to change my color to green. And using the same volumizing tool, I'm going to add some grassy tops to these islands. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, that's looking good. And then I'm going to go back to my original color here. And I'm going to use my polygon tool here, this volumizing tool, just to add some flourishes. I'm going to add a few more little rocks just to sort of make the environment a little bit more interesting. All right, so now we've added a little bit of detail to our scene, and so our islands are starting to look a little bit more natural. All right, so for the next part, we're going to make some trees to put in our environment. So I'm going to keep using that same volumizing tool, and just going to choose a different color here for our tree trunk. And I'm just going to draw that out here. So just make myself a little bit of a tree trunk there. And then I'm going to come over here and make a branch. And I'm going to use my duplication button here, duplicate that. And then using my thumbstick here, I'm going to scale that up a little bit. So we've got 2 branches here, our tree, a little bit of variety. Switch my color back to green using my volumizing tool. And then now let's go ahead and put a top on this tree. Again, we're just prototyping out here, so we're not worried about things being too perfect. All right, and then to make my life easier, I'm going to use my selection tool here, just holding down on my trigger button. I'm going to select these objects here and then release. And then I'm going to reach out and touch my objects. And you can see as soon as I touch that object, I get this button here that looks like a box on top of a box. That's my grouping button. I'm going to press that, and now my tree is grouped together. And I'm going to come in here and place this in the scene. So let's place that right about there. And then I'm going to scale this one down again using my thumbstick and put a tree there. And I'm going to make a little bit of a waterfall here too. So I just added a raised water platform there. I'm going to go back to my volumizing tool here and create some rocks around my waterfall. Okay, that's looking good. And then now just using different shapes and my draw tool, I'm going to go in and just start adding some flourishes just to give my scene a little bit more life. All right, so our scene's starting to have a little bit of life to it. So now I'm going to start building out some different elements to add to the scene. I'm not going to walk through the building of every single thing, but there's 2 things I do want to concentrate on, and that is a water wheel. We're going to build a water wheel here at the top of the waterfall, and then also this castle. We're going to build that out as well. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so the reason I chose this water wheel to build next is because it has a lot of precision to it. And I want to show you how you can use ShapesXR to create precise shapes. So to do that, we're going to use our world grid. So I'm going to turn on our snapping world grid. I'm going to do that by hitting my hamburger button menu here. Come down here to my settings, and on snapping, I'm going to turn on world. And you can see if I grab a shape and bring it into the environment, I've got these floating dots, and I can snap to these dots. And so I'm going to use this grid as a reference to snap the water wheel to so that we can build something out with precision. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with this center piece here. So let's use this cylinder shape here. I'm going to snap that to the world grid. And actually, I'm going to make sure that it's aligned properly there. And then using the gizmo tool, I'm going to stretch it out and roughly make it the size that we want. This probably won't be exactly the same as our water wheel over there, but it'll at least give us a rough idea. So we'll do that. And then I'm once again going to grab it in the center of the object here. I'm going to make sure that the center is snapped to one of the points. Doesn't really matter which one right now, but I'm going to make sure the center of the cylinder is snapped to one of our points. All right, and we're going to build off that center point. So let's go ahead and change the color here. And then I'm going to take this shape here, and you can see I can scale it up and down using this blue cube here. I'm going to snap it back to its original position by aligning the white dot of my controller with that white circle in the air. And then I'm going to hit the duplicate button. And then I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. You can't see it because it's inside of my object. And then using this cube here, I'm going to scale it out equidistant from the center, and now give our little axle there a center point. And let's go ahead and recolor that so we can see it better. And then you can see we've got some other circular objects that are also emulating from that center point. So I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to duplicate it once again, make it a little bit bigger, shrink it down to, let's do about right there. And then we've got one more bigger circle there in the middle. So we're going to snap and duplicate, make our bigger circle. And there we go. And again, it won't be exactly the same as our original, but it'll give us a good starting point. Let's go ahead and recolor that as well. And then we've got these circles on the outside. So remember, everything here is snapped to a center point on our world grid. So I'm going to come in here and use this shape here. I'm going to grab the center point and make sure it's snapped to one of these dots that's aligned with the center dot of this center shape that we've created here. And then I'm going to scale it up, and it's going to scale up from that center point. We'll move this into position. And I'm actually going to toggle over to our move gizmo. And to change the gizmo I'm using, I'm just going to touch one of the handles and then move my thumbstick to the right. I can toggle through all the different gizmo options. And I want this move option here. And I'm going to take the outside of the object, and I'm going to snap it to the surface of this inner circle, just so that we can kind of keep it all aligned. Snap that there. And then duplicate and snap this side there. Great. All right, so we're starting to create our water wheel here. Let's go ahead and create the paddles now. So I'm going to come in here, grab this shape here, and once again, I am going to snap this to a center point, same point that everything else is aligned to. And let's go ahead and change the color too so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to go over to our classic gizmo. I'm going to scale this down a little bit there. And then for this, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, move that into position kind of where I want it. So let's do about right there. And actually, yeah, so we can snap this to a center point as well. So let's go ahead and move that up there. And then scale in from the center just a little bit. And again, it's not going to be exactly the same, but hey, it'll work for our purposes. And then maybe just we'll scale up this side, snap it right there. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my move tool here, duplicate, and then I'm going to snap this one to the bottom of the circle here. So I've got two paddles on opposite sides of the wheel now. Then I'm going to select both of these paddles and then go over to my classic gizmo. And then now I'm going to rotate, and you can see here I'm rotating from the center point. So I'm going to go back to 0. You can see the 0 right there. And I'm going to hit my duplicate button. And then I'm going to go over 30 degrees, hit my duplicate button again, go over 30 degrees, hit my duplicate button again, and so on and so forth. All right, so now we have all these paddles stemming from the center point of our wheel. All right, so then last we're going to create the stands that hold the water wheel. So this is kind of a unique shape. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use our draw tool again. But in this case, I'm going to make sure the world grid is on, which it is. So we have our snapping world grid on, and I'm going to create this unique shape. So I'm going to come in here to my draw tool, and this time I'm going to choose this diamond shape here. I'm also going to go to a little lighter color here, choose the diamond shape, and I'm going to draw out that shape. So I'm not going to worry about scale right now. I can change that later. So our shape is roughly something like this. And then let's give it some depth. There we go. And then I'm going to activate the gizmo on this object by touching it and pressing the check mark button. And then I'm going to scale it down the size I want, bring it in here. Let's see, put that right about there. A little bit smaller. Let's make that a different color. Little different there. And then this one, I'm going to just eyeball. So I'm going to put that right there in the center, duplicate, and then move this one and put that one in the center as well. All right, so we've got our water wheel here, and now let's go ahead and move that into position. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything here, and then group it together. And I'm going to bring it over here to our scene, our water wheel right about there. All right, looking good. All right, to build our castle, I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to snap to our world grid. So I'm going to start with a basic shape here, snap it to a center point, change the color, and then start building out my scene. So we've got several different cylinder shapes there that we're gonna use to create this. So let's go ahead and just start roughing this out. I'm also going to use this cone shape here, snap that to a center point, and scale that up a little bit. And since it's going to be in the ground, I'm not too worried if my point comes out the bottom there. So let's go ahead and just play around with this a little bit until we get the scale that we want. All right. Duplicate that, bring that up there. And then let's go back to our cone shape here, color that red, and scale that up as well. And you can see we're starting to build out a basic shape for our castle. We also have some wood trim elements on our castle there. So for this, since we've already got some shapes in place, I'm going to take this piece here, duplicate it, I'll bring it down here. Let's go ahead and color that a wood color, and then scale that down a little bit, and then scale it up. And then let's go ahead and just start adding these into some places where we want them. All right, so I went ahead and added a few more details to our castle here. So using that volumizing tool, I just drew some rocks on the side of the castle. And just using some basic shapes, I created these windowsills. Using the draw tool, I created this door. And then just some basic shapes I used to create these cross beams and add some wood flourishings, and then also some lights there to the top. And grouped a lot of these elements together. So let's go ahead and just grab that now. And let's bring it over here and put it in place. All right, so next I'm going to add some foliage to the environment just to give it a little bit more production design. So to do that, first I want to make sure that all my snapping features are turned off. So make sure you've got that object snapping off. I'm going to go back to my Shapes button, Draw tool, and I'm going to choose this Ribbon tool here. Now, if you remember, if you move your thumbstick to the left or right, you change the thickness of your brush. And so I'm going to use this to create a leaf. And so I'm actually going to change the thickness as I'm drawing. So I'm going to start small, get big, and small again. All right, so we got a little bit of a leaf shape there. And then I'm just going to duplicate it and move that into a position right there. I'm going to select both of these now, duplicate those, and just make myself a little bit of a plant here. Maybe enlarge that just a little bit, put that underneath, so we have a little variety. Group all those together, and now we've got a plant. So I can take this plant now, and I can just sort of put it anywhere in the environment I want. So I can place it here, duplicate. Just start giving our environment a little bit of life. And I'm going to take this shape, actually, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. We're going to make a little palm tree here. So I'm going to go back to my draw tool. I'm going to choose the volumizing tool here. And then let's just kind of make a little bit of a a little bit of a palm tree. And then I'm going to select those and just do the same thing. Just sort of duplicate these and place them in the scene wherever I want, just to give us a little bit of production design. All right, looking good. All right, our scene's looking good, but I want to use the draw tool to add one more little detail. Our water is looking very flat, so I want to add a little bit of a wave effect. So to do that, I'm going to first of all go to my hamburger menu here, my general settings, make sure all my snapping tools are turned off. Go back to my shapes button, go to my draw tool, and I'm going to choose this top right icon here, this pen tool, and I've already got the color white selected. And I'm just going to make my brush stroke really big here. I'm just going to do like a curve like that. And then I'm going to come in with my gizmo tool and I am going to flatten this, make that really, really flat. And I'm also going to change the color. I'm going to do an additive color and turn my alpha all the way down. And then snap that to the surface. And then I'm just going to repeat that effect a couple more times. All right, now our water has a little bit of dimension. All right, so our scene is starting to come together. So now I'm going to build the book that's going to be in front of our guy here, so we roughly know our scale. And I'm just going to use some basic shapes in ShapesXR to create this look. I'm going to use this soft curved edged cube here, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. I've got my world grid on just so I can snap things and make sure things are properly aligned. So let's snap that there, and then I'm going to turn on our classic gizmo and start to make our book. So I'm going to start by making the spine of the book. And then I'm just going to duplicate this shape here, and I'm going to make one of the sides of the book. And then I'm going to duplicate this shape, bring this over and put that about there. And then I'm going to go to my classic gizmo and I'm going to rotate this by 15 degrees, just so it looks like our book's kind of sitting loosely open. And then I'll turn on my world gizmo here so everything moves in relationship to the world grid. And I'll realign these just so that looks good there. And since we're not really going to be seeing this, I'm not going to worry about filling in the joints. So we'll just leave those open for now. And then let's go ahead and add the pages now. So let's go back to our color. I'm going to choose this sort of off-white color here. And then for the pages, I'm going to go to the UI here, this menu. And down here at the bottom, we've got some curved screens. And I'm going to use this one right here. And I'm going to use that as a page. So I'm going to snap this to my surface here. And then I'm going to use the scale gizmo to make this more like a page. I'm actually going to raise that off the surface just a little bit because I want that coming out of the center of the spine there. So we'll go ahead and bring this all the way over and then bring our page up and then bring it down. And then just to add a little production design, I'm going to add a few pages to the book. So I'm going to select that, go back over to my classic gizmo and snap to 0. And I'm going to duplicate. And then I'm actually going to just rotate it a little bit, so about 8 degrees. And then I'll bring that page off the surface there so that lines up with the center of that page. And then we'll go ahead and make one more copy. So I'll duplicate. 8 or 9 degrees is fine. And then we'll bring that out so it's centered there. So now we've got several pages, so we've got a book that has a little bit of dimension to it. And then now I'm going to go ahead and select all of those, and I'm going to duplicate them and rotate them 90 degrees this way, or 180 degrees this way. And then for this, I'm just going to eyeball this. So I'm going to bring this over here and rotate it so that back page is aligned with the book and move that a little bit more towards the center. And there we go. We've got the formation of our book. And then I want to add an image to the book. So if we come over here and look at the screen, a preview image comes up in the book. So let's go ahead and add that. Now for this, what I did is I actually created some of these images in the app Procreate on my iPad. And then I exported them as PNGs with transparencies. And then I imported them into ShapesXR through our web portal. And then after I've done that, I can come back into Shapes. I can go to my assets library here and come down here to imports. And I've got all my files here. And I believe this is the one. Yeah, I'm going to use this one here. And just using my grip button, I'm going to bring that in. And then where it says transparency mode, I'm going to choose cutout. And then I've got this nice image here. Come over here. I'm going to snap that to the surface of the page and enlarge that and put that into position. All right, so I went ahead and added just some flat text to these pages. That's text straight from the game. And then I also added these yellow arrows right here. And these are the arrows that users are going to click on to turn the pages to advance through the menu. All right, so this is our completed design. I went ahead and added a few more little flourishes. So I built a little dock here, making some basic shapes. There was a well in the game, so I added that, some flowers, and some little life preservers. I put those out here in the water as well. A staircase over there to the side, and then there's these targets that sort of grow on these sticks, and that's all part of the game. So I think we're good to go. This is sort of our finished design here. There's one last thing that I want to add, and I want to add a skybox. I want to give this environment a blue sky with some clouds in it. So to do that, I go to a website called blockadelabs.com. It's a site where you can create AI-generated skyboxes. And all you have to do is just type in your parameters, just like you would on any other AI imaging device. And it will generate a 360 panorama photo for you. And then after I got that photo, I applied it to an inverted sphere in Blender, exported it as an OBJ file, and then I uploaded it to the Shapes web portal. And then after that, I can come back in here to Shapes, and I can access that 360 photo from my menu. Here it is right here. And I'm just going to put this kind of right here in the center of my circle. And then I'm going to just scale it up from the center. And there we have it. So we've got a nice skybox surrounding our environment. We've got our book, and we are good to go. All right, so let's go ahead now and start adding our interactivity. So what's going to happen is when users press this arrow here, the page should turn and reveal a new section of the menu. So to do that, I've created several stages that I'm using sort of as an animation to transition between each page. So let me go ahead and show you the stages that I've built. So I'm starting on stage 4. That's actually our starting stage. And then on stage 5, you can see I've got a stage here where the page is turned. You'll also notice the arrows slightly decreased in size. And then we go over to stage 6. Page turns again. The arrows have gotten even smaller. And then we go to stage 7. And now the new menu is up. But then we also have another animation that's continuing here. A sub-menu is coming out of the side of the book. So stage 8 is that menu almost all the way out. And you can see our arrows are starting to come back into the scene. Stage 9, and there we have it. So that's the sequence. So I want to show you how we can add interaction to this sequence and make this play automatically. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we're going to start back on stage 4. And to activate the interactivity menu in ShapesXR, I'm going to press this lightning bolt button right here. So interactivity, and that pulls up the interactivity menu. And on this menu here, it shows you what stage you're on. And this is your menu, your drop-down menu, where you can choose whatever interaction you want. And you also have this play button here. So once you've added all your interactions, you can press play here and rehearse the interaction to see if it's working correctly. All right, so we're on stage 4. So the first interaction I want to add is a on click. So I'm going to do that. And when this is first pulled up, what I want to do is I want to assign this interactivity to an object in the space. And in this case, I want to assign it to this arrow here. So I'm just going to point at this arrow here and pull my trigger button. And now that button has been assigned to this action. So you can see when I hover over it, I've got that line that shows me what object it's attached to. And in this case, when users click on this arrow, I want us to go to stage 5. When you add an interactivity, it automatically defaults to the next stage, and that's the stage where we want to go, so we're looking good. All right, so let's now go over to stage 5. Now, this is the beginning of the animation sequence, and so I want several of these stages, stages 5 through 8, or actually 5 through 9, I want those stages to play automatically without any clicks happening when they're playing through. So let's go ahead now and go to stage 5 because that's the stage we're going to go to when users click on the arrow. And in this case, the interaction I'm going to add is an after delay interaction. So I'm going to click that. And what after delay does is it just leaves the stage displayed for whatever time you've set. So in this case, I want it to be 0.1 seconds. So I want this stage to display very quickly. And then as soon as it's displayed for 0.1 seconds, I want it to go to the next stage, which is stage 6, automatically defaulted there. So we're good to go. So now I'm going to use my thumbstick, go over to stage 6, add another after delay interaction. After 0.1 seconds, I want it to go to stage 7. Now I'm going to manually go over to stage 7, add the same interaction again. After delay, go to stage 8. On stage 8, add another after delay, and it goes to stage 9. And then actually, we're going to actually go all the way to stage 10. So after delay, go to stage 10. All right. So then now, using my thumbstick over here, I'm just going to manually go back to stage 4. And then from there, I'm going to press the play button. So now we are in play mode or interactivity mode. And this button here, the arrow, this is the arrow that we assigned the interactivity to. And by pointing at the arrow and pressing my trigger button, that will click us to the next stage and begin the animation sequence. So let's see what happens. All right, it worked perfectly. So looking good. All right, so I want to show you two other tools that you have in your interactivity menu, and those are the on hover enter and on hover exit. Now, typically in games and applications, when you hover over a button, it usually changes in some ways. It highlights a different color, it enlarges, or something of that nature. So these interactions here, your hover interactions, are designed specifically for that purpose. So what we're going to do is we are going to create an interaction that shows what this button looks like when users hover over it before they click on it. Now, this isn't actually part of the game. I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to go to stage 4. This is our starting stage, and I'm going to duplicate this stage. So now stage 4 and 5 are exactly the same. And on stage 5, I'm going to show what this button looks like when it's hovered over. So in this case, I'm just going to enlarge it a little bit. So that's what I want the button to look like when users hover over it. So if I go back to stage 4, this is what the button looks like when it's behaving normally. And if I go over to stage 5, that's what it looks like when users hover over it. So let's go back to stage 4, and let's add an on hover enter. So when users hover over this, I want them to enter to stage 5. Now, first of all, I have to assign it to a shape. So while this is still pulled up, I just click on this shape here with my trigger button, and you can see that's now assigned to that shape. So when users hover over this, it's automatically going to go to stage 5. All right, so let's go over to stage 5 now. So I'm just going to use my thumbstick and manually go over to stage 5. And on stage 5, I'm going to add an on hover exit to the same shape. And in this case, I want it to go back a stage. So we're on stage 5 right now, so I want it to go back to stage 4. So I'm just going to click on that stage 6 right there and type in stage 4. All right. So now when users hover over this on stage 4, it should go to stage 5. And then when they hover off of it, it should go to stage 4. So let's go ahead and play this out and see if it's working. So here's our stage 4, and you can see when I hover over it, it enlarges. And then when I exit, it goes back to stage 4. So you can actually see this right here on my display. So stage 4, hover to go to stage 5, off of it back to 4. And there you go. So that's how you use the hover effect. All right, so that's how the 4 different interactivity tools work. So I've gone ahead and added a lot of interactivity to the scene. I've changed the environment on some of the stages, given a different skybox on a few stages, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and now play out this entire interaction and see how it goes. So I'm going to activate my interactivity menu and press the play button to start the interactivity. And then I'm going to press this button here to turn the page. And then I can also go back, forward. And then right here, if I click on this, it brings up this menu. So that's something that I built out also in ShapesXR. And then I added this return button right there. Takes us back to the book. We can move forward again. And you can see on this stage, I changed the environment and the colors of the trees and added some windmills to reflect what this particular stage looks like. And then I click it again. Then we're taken to a page, and this level is locked for game players. So I've got these rays of light shining down, and we're in a dark room because this room has not yet been unlocked for users. And then we can navigate our way back to the beginning. All right, folks, that's Lucky's Tale. That is ShapesXR. We've gone over the draw tool. We've gone over interactivity. So I hope this was informative for you all. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next XR Remake video. Bye, everybody.